Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. We're going to call to order the May 20th, 2021 meeting of the Harbor Commission. Good evening to everybody. Ms. Rodriguez, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, of course, Chair Sly. Commissioner Kramer?
Present.
Commissioner McCray?
Here.
Commissioner Nelson?
Present.
Commissioner Sloan is absent at tonight's meeting. Commissioner Stanwyck?
Here.
Commissioner Stedman?
Here.
And Chair Sly.
Here.
All right, everybody's here. Thank you. Oh, sorry, except for Commissioner Sloan.
Okay, thank you. I think we're all really looking forward to not too far down the road when we can meet in person again and not worry about whether we had our mic turned on or off, or our camera was on or off, and greet each other in person. That's going to be great. Do we have any changes to the agenda tonight?
Chair Sly, Commissioners, good to see you. No changes to the agenda tonight.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is general public comment, and I'd like to preface that by saying that the commissioners got an email with a link to 2 letters that were recently received, and I hope you all had a chance to read those. And I want to acknowledge at this point that we do appreciate and value the public's input, and we thank you for making your views and suggestions known. Regarding general public, we take comments on specific items as they come up in the agenda, but has anyone signed up to make comments on items that are not on the agenda?
Hi, Chair Sly. At this time, I'm not sure if this is for general public comment, but we do have one person with her hand raised, Miss Anna Marie Gott. But before I call on her, I want to remind the public, if they do want to speak, they can indicate that by raising their hand with the raise and lower their hand icon on the control panel. And Anna Marie Gott, I'm going to call on you, and you may begin.
Good evening, Commissioners. I just want to make a comment about written public comments and when they are actually posted at some of the other boards. We have the ABR, the HLC, and the Planning Commission, and some of our other boards that are actually posting in advance of a meeting the written public comments. And I think that your board also should have these comments posted on your webpage in advance of the meeting, preferably as they come in, but if not, at least the morning of your meeting. I think that that's very important for individuals who might be interested in particular items, as well as any information that people might want to send for general public comment. Regarding your brief discussion for, when we're going to be returning actually to in-person meetings, I just want to make a comment regarding the public's ability to actually participate more, because we can do this at home and we can do this by phone. I think that it is very important to encourage as much participation as possible. And I think that actually making people, head down to City Hall for your meetings every Thursday evening, that actually reduces public comment, because people have to take an exorbitant amount of time to get to the meeting instead of being able to listen in to a meeting online and being able to call in and participate. So I would really hope that you would want to continue this type of communication moving forward so that we can encourage as much participation as possible.
And that concludes our general public comment. There are no other individuals with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gott, for your input and interesting ideas. I think there has been some discussion of the posting of correspondence from the public and what kinds of things and when and so forth. So that may be an agenda item in the near future. I know some other bodies at the city are doing that. Next item is approval of the minutes. Before we
Betsy,
ask
did you have a
for-
question or something?
I'm sorry, somebody had a
Hi.
question? Oh,
Yeah,
Betsy.
Lang, I'd like to make a comment that the letters are posted on the website. I don't know when they went up. The letters from Anna Marie Gott, they are there for the public to read. So, just my observation.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Thank you.
And
Any other comments? Before we ask for a motion to approve the minutes, does anyone have any suggestions or corrections to the minutes as written? Okay, let's just do a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written for the April 15, 2021 meeting, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
And I will abstain since I was not in attendance at that meeting. Item 2, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I interrupt and have someone make a motion and a second for that?
Oh, I'm so sorry. We went right past that, didn't we?
It's okay.
I must have low blood sugar tonight. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as written for the April 15th meeting?
I'll move.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? And my abstention. Okay. Thank you for keeping me on track there. So we'll go to the director's report, and Mr. Wilshire, if you would give us that, and then we can just move on through the other departmental reports if you would like.
Perfect. Yeah. Good evening, Harbor Commission, and anyone tuned in. Yeah, Chair Sly, good to have you back. Hope your time off went well. I did want to make a quick comment to the public tuned in. We've got what I think is a pretty exciting item on the agenda today. We're holding a slip lottery for 2 20-foot slips. So for anyone that is tuned in for the slip lottery process, that'll come a little later in the meeting. I assume we won't be getting to the lottery for at least an hour or so. We've got a little bit of regular business to take care of. So 7:30 is probably a realistic time when we would get back to the slip lottery if you happen to have something else to do or we're only tuning in for that. So just wanted to give you a heads up that that'll come a little later in the meeting. And just to speak to the posting of correspondence, I was going to talk about that later on, but I'll just talk about it now. The city, the waterfront staff and the city and other boards and commissions are kind of working on the mechanics behind how to do that. I think we're pretty set up, and that looks like the way we're going to go forth is to post public correspondence on the Harbor Commission website the day of the meeting or prior to the meeting. We did do it this round just as a little bit of a trial run. So as we kind of perfect that process, it may change a little bit, but I think the idea is to meet with the city and other boards and commissions, and going forward, we'll be posting that public correspondence on the website prior to meetings. All right, so yeah, with that, I'll get started on my report. Next slide, Angela. So as I've been doing for the last several months, I'll give a quick update on COVID and really the impacts to the waterfront. So again, you're kind of used to seeing this graph. It shows the Santa Barbara County COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic back in March of last year. So we're really still trending in the right direction, downward. Our case counts are dropping. So county-wide, we're seeing case counts kind of in the single digits, which is a really good thing. I do just want to remind the commission and the public that all of this data here and more is available on the Santa Barbara County Health website. So this is really our main source for tracking and getting this COVID-related data. So the website is up on the screen right at the bottom there, or you can just Google Santa Barbara County Health, and it's really useful data and a useful site to keep tabs on everything that's going on. Next slide. All right, so by now I believe everyone's kind of aware of this statewide tier system, which is a part of California's blueprint for a safer economy. So there are 4 tiers, and we're kind of working our way through these tiers as the pandemic conditions improve. Currently, Santa Barbara remains in the orange tier, which does have some implications and restrictions impacting waterfront tenant operations. So under the orange tier, our tenants are limited to 50% indoor dining, 50% capacity at museums and aquariums, and 100% capacity at retail and charters. So boat charters can be operating at 100% capacity. As of this week, so based on our case count, it's anticipated that Santa Barbara will move into the least restrictive yellow tier kind of within the coming week or weeks. And the yellow tier further loosens our restrictions and really has some additional allowances for restaurants, museums, and charters. So look for us moving into those tiers in the next week or two. And then shown on this graphic is a statewide map showing what tiers each county is in. So I thought it was pretty interesting that the large urban areas, LA and San Francisco, they've moved into the least restrictive yellow tier, really ahead of most counties. So it's kind of a quick turnaround for the big cities who were kind of really struggling earlier on and around the holidays, but they've kind of improved their numbers dramatically and have been in the yellow, the least restrictive tier for quite some time now. Next slide, Angela. All right, so with respect to city public meetings and in-person meetings, so as the situation continues to improve, the city and waterfront, we're starting to lay out plans to really start trying to get back to business as usual. There's a lot of talk of when and how the city will resume public meetings in person and how that'll look. As of now, the city is really tied to the statewide reopening date of June 15th. That's kind of a trigger point for a lot of this sort of stuff to start happening. I know council does intend to lead the charge and really be the first back at in-person meetings. So this will likely be some sort of hybrid approach with council members and staff meeting in person, but still allowing for public comment to be made virtually or over the phone or however that'll work. As of now, I believe council's targeting meetings maybe in July to potentially start having in-person meetings, at least with all of the council members and council chambers. Other boards and commissions, so us, Harbor Commission, we'll kind of follow council's lead and aim to start meeting in person around that same time. So really, I'd anticipate Harbor Commission meetings. We have the potential to begin in-person meetings if all things kind of go the right direction sometime this summer. I believe our July meeting is canceled for our summer break, so it's really quite feasible that we could have some sort of in-person meeting by August. What exactly that will look like, I don't know yet, but that's kind of the effort that's going on now, is to try and start figuring out how that's going to look to wind back to in-person meetings. Any questions on that stuff so far? I think I've got one more slide. All right, hearing none, we'll hop to oh, yeah, next slide, Angela. All right, so I'm gonna take a little break here and turn it over to Jeanette Przinski. She's our administrative supervisor and really our marina operations guru. So she's gonna talk a little bit about our plans to reopen our public counter.
Hello, everybody. Hi, thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. Hi, Chair Sly and commissioners. Yeah, real briefly here. So June 15th is a big deal here. We're scheduled to be reopening the front counter. There's been a handful of citywide meetings with other departments who have public counters, and we've been talking about the protocols and challenges each one of us are facing with reopening our counter. And here at the waterfront, our biggest challenge is how to usher people through. Our stairs coming up to the office are pretty narrow, and our lobby is relatively small. So what we've done is we've had a buzzer type of mechanism installed on our door, so that when somebody comes up and knocks on our door, we already have the intercom installed, and so we can buzz that person in. one person or maybe two people at a time if they're already within the same bubble, and we can help them at the front counter. So at the counter itself, we have a plexiglass installed. It's one of those standards that you've seen at other places that have cash registers. So we have the plexiglass installed. And then we also have this movable barrier. It's kind of like one of those screens that you see in living rooms. It's a transparent thing to keep the lobby split so that there's a section for the general public, and then there's a section that staff can use to get into the kitchen area and our conference room. So inside the lobby, we've removed all of the brochures, books, and so if anybody needs any materials, we can hand it to them individually. That way they're not, walking around kind of thumbing through items. And in case anybody doesn't have a mask, we'll have masks available. I think it's been a year, so I don't really foresee that being a problem, but just in case. So also with that means that we're going to be resuming the paused services. So the things that we're going to be booting back up come June 15 are the vessel measurements. So we've got, the backlog of boats that need to be measured that have come in. So Harbor Patrol will be doing that. Also, we'll be checking in our visitor boats in person now, so that we can check their ID and check their vessel registration. We'll be resuming the dye tabbing, which is that colored tablet that will light up if there is an accidental discharge. So we'll be resuming that. Also, regarding the visitors, we will be resuming the fish tickets. For our commercial fishermen visitors who are here for long-term, they turn in a couple of fish tickets just to prove that they're continually fishing. So that's done in person. So we'll be resuming that. So basically we're ready come June 15th. If that date changes, we're ready, at the flip of a switch to welcome the public back into the counter, one at a time, maybe two at a time. So that's basically it. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Awesome. Well, Betsy, you're on.
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Jeanette. Do you have any thoughts about when it might be fully open to the public instead of one or two at a time, getting back to things being quote unquote normal?
That really happens along with the city. I think that once we are out of the pandemic, and specifically it's that 6 foot distance, once that's eased up and we don't have to wear masks and all that, then we can be normal in the front counter. But
Right.
yeah, I'm not exactly
Not
sure. I
wondering
think
if there had been any talk about when that might happen.
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Commissioner Kramer, we're really going to take the lead from Santa Barbara County Health and the CDC on that stuff. So we're excited. It'll be a big step, kind of opening June 15th, and then we'll likely take it from there and see how the case counts are doing.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jeanette.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, next slide. I think it's my last one. So the usual. Here are a few items. So these are a few items that are kind of on our pending or to-do list. So slated for some of the upcoming meetings are, at some point, we're going to receive a pretty robust update from the Slip Assignment Policy Committee and all of their efforts. So that subcommittee's been meeting pretty regularly, and it is soon approaching a time where some input from the entire commission is needed. So we can expect kind of a fairly robust item on that in the near future. And then Eric Engbretson owes the commission an update on the East Beach mooring field permit process. So that should be coming in the next few months as well. And we do have a tentative speaker from the APCD, Air Pollution Control District, to talk on county requirements, grants, et cetera. I know that one's been pending. And then also we do have a placeholder to have a discussion on possible insurance requirements within the harbor. I know that's of interest of some of the commissioners, and yeah, we'll get that on calendar in the near future to talk about that. So with that, unless there are any other questions, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brian Bossy for his business report. All right, hearing none. Mr. Bossy, you're up.
Good evening, commissioners. It's nice to see you all on this blustery evening. I have a brief business services report, giving you an update on our finances through the end of the third quarter, which was March 31st of this year. Now, keep in mind, when I start discussing this, I will be comparing current numbers to last year's numbers at this time. That's a little unfair, to be honest, because last year at this time, we were just 2 weeks, the third quarter at least, we only had 2 weeks of COVID. Remember, that started around Friday, March 13th. So we only had 2 real weeks of impact, budgetary impact from COVID related issues. So obviously this year we have been fully impacted by COVID-19. So next slide, please. Okay, so on the left are our revenue programs. The second column is our fiscal year 21 budget. Third column is where we're at as of March 31st. And then on the fourth column is the percent of the 2021 budget. Now keep in mind also last year, we had to shift dramatically and we reduced our budget. We reduced our revenue projections, we cut costs, we cut out a lot of capital. So that being said, in comparison to our budget, our property management program is tracking slightly above the 75% marker, 3/4 of the way through the year. Our commercial leases have actually, they're up 3.3% over last year. That's pretty remarkable considering our current circumstances. Obviously, the big impact was to our restaurant leases, and they are down about 18% or $438,000 compared to last year. Our financial management program, as we mentioned in previous discussions, is lagging. We have less money invested, as well as just less money in reserves because we've been doing projects, paying down previous loans and things like that. So that's coming in well below the targets, and those will be adjusted in fiscal year 22 and 23. Again, less money in there being invested by our finance department, and then obviously record low interest rates. Our parking services, another one that's been significantly impacted along with the restaurants as far as COVID-19 is concerned. They are down from last year about 10% or $216,000. That's an improvement since mid-year, so they've been creeping up. And actually, we had some really good numbers the last few weekends of March. We had, I believe, one of the Sundays rivaled as far as revenue, a busy August Sunday. So we are seeing signs when the weather's good, people are coming out. So we are seeing positive signs out there for our revenues. And then lastly is marina management. This is kind of the one sole bright spot in our budget. They are tracking about 10% above last year at this time. A big part of that is the slip permit transfers. And through March 31st, we had 80 transfers take place and at a total of about $1.25 million. So lots of activity out there with slip permit transfers. Next slide, please. As far as expenditures are concerned, as you know, we've really tightened the belt. We've cut everywhere we can, everywhere we think we can. And we're at just under 64% of our budget through 75% of the fiscal year. We've mentioned this before, our salaries and benefits have significantly been reduced. We've held a number of positions open and continue to do so. We're slowly filling those and hopefully, maybe by the end of the calendar year, we'll be up at full staff. So those two have saved us quite a bit of expenditures. Let's see, our debt service is front weighted, so that's always above where we are in the fiscal year. It's front loaded in, I believe, August and September, so those numbers are always high throughout the year. Other things of note, really not a whole lot. Everything's at or below the 75% mark, 3/4 of the way through the year. And we anticipate that those savings will continue through the end of the year, probably to the tune of at least $1.2 million in expenditure savings from the cuts and things like that we've put into play for this fiscal year. Next slide, please. So these are our best guess based on our numbers as of March 31st. Fix my screen. Okay, so as far as property management is concerned, we're anticipating that we're going to come in about 2% above our budgeted projections. That's a good thing, especially knowing the significant impacts COVID has had on the restaurants. Our financial management, again, there's not a lot we can do about that. Again, our finance department is working on retooling those numbers for fiscal year 2022. Our parking services continues to be impacted by COVID-19, but as I showed you, we're down about 10% right now. We're thinking, that's compared to last year, we're thinking we'll be about 8% below our budgeted targets for this fiscal year. But I gotta tell you, we have seen some really good weekends. I anticipate that number will actually be less than 8%. And we're hoping, as Mike said, Mr. Wiltshire said, we're on a good path here. We're hoping to get into that yellow tier. We've had busy weekends, and hopefully if we can get into that yellow tier next week, that momentum will continue and our restaurants will see a big turnaround here in the last part of May and as well as June, and then just keep that rolling through the summer. And our marina management, we anticipate that it'll come in about 6% above our budget target. Overall, big picture, we think we're going to meet budget by a little over 1% to the tune of about coming $167,000 over. Again, that's our best projection at this time. As you know, things change every day, but we really are seeing some positive activity down here, and restaurants with a lot more people. We've got people waiting to get into restaurants. Parking is filling up. So it's all pointed in the right direction. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Brian,
Yes, Commissioner Nelson.
I'm curious, all the categories that you had to deplete funding for. One was your operating budget. You did cost savings there. The other was the deferred capital projects. And I think a third was you had to dip into your reserves. So if you added all of those up, what was, I guess, the fiscal impact that you had to work through to survive the pandemic today?
That's a good question. We haven't this fiscal year had to dig into reserves. We budgeted according, again, when we were doing this last April and last May, adjusting for COVID, not knowing how long that would take to work itself through our society, we really dropped our numbers significantly in order to not have to get into reserves. Fiscal year 2022, which we presented to you over the last couple months, that's where we're going to have to go and dip into reserves. So for this current fiscal year 21, we're going to see salary and benefit savings to the tune of probably $750,000 by keeping positions open. Capital projects, we reduced those by about $500,000 as well and deferred those until later. Obviously, as you all know, we want to get to those sooner as opposed to later because they don't get any cheaper as time goes on. And then we also reduced supplies and services to the tune of about $340,000. Or no, sorry, more than that. That was just by eliminating our payment to the waterfront shuttle. Just that alone saved us another $340,000. And then everything from community promotion, meaning July 4th. We didn't have a July 4th ceremony last year. We didn't have the Harvard Seafood Festival, the Nautical Swap Meet, and things like that. That saved us a lot expenditure-wise as well. So it's kind of across the board, everywhere we could find opportunities to reduce, we did.
Great. I was just trying to get an idea of the whole picture. And then finally, would you add to that, if you did reserves, capital, operating, where would you put the rental deferrals? I think there's $900,000 in unpaid rents that were deferred and could be deferred for another 4 years, depending on the fiscal circumstance of our tenants.
Chair Slight, Commissioner Nelson, our rent deferral program, as you know, ended December 31st. And so for the last half of fiscal year 2020, so right when COVID hit, that March, April, May, and June, those 3 months, that tallied about $450,000 in rent deferral. And then for the first 6 months of this fiscal year, it tallied between $900,000 and $1 million, $900,000 to $1 million. So it started out, we had about 21 tenants in that program. It shrank a little to where we ended on December 31st with 19 tenants in the program. So far, 5 of those tenants have paid in full, kind of the smaller amounts. So that's helpful. As Mr. Wiltshire mentioned last meeting, I believe we have an incentive program where if whatever they can pay by the end of this calendar year, December 31st, they'll get a 20% discount. So we anticipate come the end of December that we're going to have a large influx of money with people trying to take advantage of that 20%, especially if we see restaurants starting to get packed again. I think people are going to use that to then pay down what they owe us. So I think we're going to see a big influx of revenue, past due revenue, towards the end of this calendar year. So right now we're at about 14 tenants still in the program who still have deferred rent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. We good? I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Struggling to get my mic back on there. I think we can roll into the facilities management report if there are no other financial questions.
Good job,
Thanks,
Brian.
Thanks, everybody.
All
I
right.
think that's Mike doing the facilities management tonight, is it not?
Yeah, you're stuck with me again for this one. Our facilities manager, Brian Adair, wasn't able to make this meeting, so I'll run through the facilities management report. Next slide, Angela. So a couple of these things we've talked about, but they're big and they warrant an update. So the underground fuel storage tank replacement project. So this has really been our most kind of front and center project over the last few months. Certainly it's come with some disruptions to regular traffic and business down here. So as of today, the contractor, they have poured new concrete over the tanks and are really wrapping up the finishing touches. So the good news is they're on schedule and hopeful that this project will be completed by the end of next week. So that's just prior to Memorial Day weekend. Next slide, Angela. And here's a quick photo taken just earlier this week, I think yesterday or the day before. So you can see that there's all new concrete. The tanks are in. They're kind of buttoning up some finishing touches with piping and controls and all that sort of thing. But we're getting there. The day is near when the fencing will be gone and everybody can drive as normal in Harbor Way. So looking forward to it. Any questions on the fuel tank before I move on? All right. Next slide. All right, so sewer main replacement. So during the fuel tank replacement project, an 8-inch sewer main was exposed and it was actually damaged a bit. So this prompted Public Works to inspect the line and determined it was due for replacement. So Public Works and the contractor took really, really quick action, and they've been here this week replacing that sewer line. So as of today, they're closing up that trench, and we anticipate that work to be completed this week or early next week as well. And just to clarify, so being that this was a main sewer line, it was the responsibility of Public Works. And so Public Works managed and paid for the replacement of that sewer line. So that was good. No cost to the waterfront there. Next slide. And just a quick graphic, an overhead image of the section of sewer line that was replaced. You can see it designated by that red line there. And this sewer line serves the yacht club, the 132 Harbor Way, our admin building, and all of Marina One. So fairly significant. Any questions on the sewer line replacement before I move on? Nope. All right, next slide. All right, so I'll be really quick on this, but just wanted to provide a little bit of information. So the spring dredging cycle of the Federal Channel wrapped up successfully on April 19th. So the Army Corps did reach their goal and removed a little over 150,000 cubic yards of sand, which was relocated down to East Beach. And so just a little reminder, so we've completed 4 of the 6 cycles within this dredging contract with Pacific Dredge. And so we'll resume dredging again next year for the fall and spring cycle again, and that'll bring us to the end of this contract. And the Army Corps will go back out to bid for another contract for future years dredging. Next slide.
Question.
Yeah, Commissioner Kramer.
Question, Mike. How does this compare with prior springs? It seems to me that there was less sand this time, but
yeah, a little bit less, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I know the fall dredging cycle was low because there really wasn't a lot of storm activity, and that storm activity is what kind of moves the sand around the sandspit into the harbor. And so you could see it in that before our fall dredging cycle, the sandspit itself was really big. They were between the fall cycle and the spring cycle, they were able to meet their quota for this year. So they did basically dredge as much as they could have. I think each cycle, their quota is 120,000 cubic yards. So by doing 150,000, they kind of carried over 30,000 from the previous cycle. So it was nice that there was a little bit of activity that pushed sand into the harbor before the spring cycle that we were able to get.
great, thank you.
And on the screen now, it just kind of shows a depth survey. So if you look on the harbor entrance side of the sandspit, you can see it's kind of yellowish and reddish and greenish. That really just indicates shallow water. This was sort of a pre-dredge survey. And we'll just hop to the next slide quickly. And it's a little nuanced, but you see that clear channel that's now kind of bluish greenish. So that indicates deeper water, and that's where they were targeting the dredging this cycle. So they really kind of increase the depth of that space. And this is something the Army Corps does before and after each dredge. They provide this survey. All right, next slide. All right, so last but not least, I wanted to call attention to a promotion within the department. So I really wanted to congratulate Nels Anderson. He was promoted to maintenance superintendent back in February. Just kind of bringing it to everyone's attention now. Nels has been at the waterfront for almost 10 years, so since 2012. And he just really brings so much to the maintenance and upkeep of everything, harbor, Stearns Wharf. Nels is responsible for an extremely capable staff, and he's just really good at what he does. I know all of our maintenance staff and Nels, they kind of often work behind the scenes, and it's funny, really, when they're doing their job well, everything tends to work and nobody really notices. So I did just want to take a moment and really give Nels and his maintenance team the kudos that they deserve for. It's really just a dedicated work group, and they're exceptionally capable and competent, and they're all just a real pleasure to work with. So kudos to Nels in his new role and really his whole team. With that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Engbretson for his harbor operations report.
Good evening, Chair Sly, Harbor Commissioners. For the members of the public that don't know me, my name is Eric Engebretson, and I'm the Harbor Operations Manager. Next slide, please. And Angela, if you could play the video, thanks. So Harbor Patrol recently trained with oil deployment boom. For those of you that don't know exactly what oil deployment boom is, it creates a barrier or a containment of a certain area. And this is part of Harbor Patrol's annual training, just one of the trainings that they do. It's also part of the Waterfront's emergency response plan and area contingency plan. The May drill consisted of pulling a boom across West Beach to the sand spit, either to contain the spill within the harbor or to protect the harbor from a spill outside of the harbor. Next slide, please. So as you can see, for an example, a spill from outside of the harbor, reliving an era back in 1969 with the Platform A Dos Cuadras offshore oil field. There was a blowout at Platform A, and in a 10-day period, approximately 80 to 100,000 barrels of crude oil went into the Pacific Ocean and Santa Barbara Channel and contaminated beaches in Santa Barbara County. Oil boom increases Harbor Patrol's efficiency during all emergencies contained within the harbor and again outside. We also work with the NRC, National Response Center, who additionally have more boom deployed, able to deploy here in the harbor. We have approximately 5,000 feet total. This maintains our hazardous waste operation emergencies exposures and response, and it's part of our OSHA required training. And that concludes that portion of the oil boom deployment. Any questions? Next slide, please. So I'm not sure if everyone knows, but the Santa Barbara Black Swan theory is true. It actually happened here in Santa Barbara Harbor. We were visited in early May by 5 black swans. The Waterfront Department and the Wildlife Care Network, they fielded dozens of calls from concerned citizens regarding these black swans, which are indigenous to Western Australia. This particular bank visiting black swans may have originated from the Lake Forest area and or Newport Beach Harbor area. Staff later learned that the swans were captured and relocated in an undisclosed location in the San Ynez Valley. And a quick point to make here, a lot of the folks that were calling were just really concerned about black swans in the marine saltwater environment. And it was later learned by myself that black swans have a salt gland just below their eyes that excrete salt from the salt water they ingest. And therefore there was no harm to this particular birds coming to the harbor. I guess you call it a built-in desalinization plant. Next slide, please. The Santa Barbara ATON project. Angela, if you can kind of outline the buoys in question. So in mid-August, the Coast Guard approached staff in regards to replacing some of our navigational floating aids with 7 to 8 buoys that were identified. And of those currently in that area, they are serviced approximately four times a year, and at least 2 of those times coincide with dredging operations. The possible options were to replace the floating buoys with fixed fiber reinforced piles, or FRPs, that are driven into the ocean floor. Next slide, please. So the permanently affixed aids to navigation, as pictured here on the right, there's a lot of pros. They're larger, they're easier to see. There's less cost involved in maintenance. And of course, Less cost is a big issue as well. The cons are the flexibility. The channel changes and it's not really easy to move fixed piles from one location to another. And also there were some concerns from the Army Corps of Engineers of how easy it would be to dredge in and around these fixed piles. Also the ATON lights on top of the markers are positioned relatively high, and vessels transiting at night may have difficulty seeing the lights with the backwash from the city lights of the city. And of course, aesthetics were also brought up. Army Corps of Engineers will weigh in on this additionally, and there will be more discussions with the Coast Guard as we move forward. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
I have a question or comment.
Sure.
I just like to put my 2 cents in that while we might be able to do with the fixed piles for the red ones on towards the pier, those green buoys, they get moved around all the time, and sometimes the shifting sands can shift so quickly that you'll find one of them laying sideways at low tide before anybody's had a chance to get to them, and it usually happens within just a few hours. I think it would be a mistake to replace the more mobile buoys with something that was permanent, or permanent until Mother Nature decided otherwise.
Commissioner McCray, yes, that was discussed with the Coast Guard. It was a major concern by staff. And that particular area that you're talking about, like you said, we have to move those buoys constantly. A lot of times they break, the chain ends up down in the sand with the sinker. The dredge comes along, it sucks up the sinker and the chain. But again, you're correct. That is a pretty dynamic area. We have a lot of movement of sand. That sand spit grows really quick. We all know that. One option was to bring in shoal buoys if that happened. But again, you know, the Army Corps of Engineers is weighing in on this, and they'll get together and discuss further with the Coast Guard on it. But that has been brought up.
Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Any other questions on this report? Or on any of the departmental reports? Hearing none, we'll go to new business. Item 6 on the agenda is the Bicycle Share Pilot Program status update. The recommendation is that the Harbor Commission receive an update on the City Council's Bicycle Share Pilot Program and review typical proposed bike share locations in the harbor. And Mr. Wilshire, is this your item?
Yeah, Harbor Commission. I'd just like to introduce Samuel Fertner. He's with the Public Works Transportation Division. So Public Works is coming back again. It's gathered quite a bit of interest last time we spoke about it. So Sam's back to talk about the bike share pilot program. I'll be here and available, but really, Mr. Fertner, he's going to be the resident expert on providing us a little bit of an update on where the program's at and how it kind of impacts the waterfront.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, Chair Sly, Harbor Commissioners. My name is Sam Fertner. As Mike referenced, I am the Mobility Coordinator with the Public Works Department. I've been working very closely with Bike Share and the early rollout here in the city and the Bicycle Share Pilot Program as a whole. And tonight, I'd just like to provide a quick update on the status of the program, what we're seeing so far, and then also look at some proposed locations in the harbor vicinity. Next slide, please, Angela. So transportation planning staff came to the Harbor Commission on February 18th of this year to provide a quick introduction as to what bike share is. And I just wanted to remind commissioners this evening, bike share is really meant to serve as a point-to-point transportation option. It certainly has the potential to reduce traffic and parking demand. It's affordable. It's an excellent resource when it's a little bit too far to walk, but it's also too close to drive. But for bike share to be effective and for the network to be effective, it really needs to provide access to key destinations, which is why we and our bike share operator, B-Cycle, feel that the waterfront and the harbor vicinity is an excellent location. Just to revisit some of the technology that B-Cycle uses in our bike share pilot program, on the right-hand side, you'll see an image of an implemented station up by Cottage Hospital that is utilizing the 3.0 docks, as well as the B-Cycle bike. The B-Cycle bike is manufactured by Trek, and it is a pedal assist electric bike. So you gain a little bit of power when you apply torque to the pedals. These bikes are limited to 17 miles an hour, which is actually less than an off-the-shelf Class 1 e-bike would be, which is what everyone's riding around town. So in addition to being a little bit slower, these bikes are also not the lightest. These are designed for rigorous bike share use. They're stable. They have front and rear lights that are constantly illuminated, and they're well suited, we think, for a bike share in the city of Santa Barbara. Next slide, please. So in looking at the bike share network as it stands, this is actually from May 7th of this year. All the locations in black that you see on the screen are implemented locations. There are docks on the ground there. There are bikes available. This is all available also on the app, so you can tell in real time where bikes might be located, how many bikes are there, how many open docks there are, etc. But what we can see in this image is really the start of the network building out. We've gotten a little bit, we've dipped our toe in the water on the east side and the west side, and a little bit on Upper State, certainly covering the Cottage Hospital and the downtown State Street corridor. And now we need to expand into the waterfront and the coastal zone. So this evening, we have 4 potential sites we'd like to share with you. And again, I would just like to remind you that these sites are part of, the trial of bike share in Santa Barbara. 3 of the sites we've reviewed with, we've reviewed all the sites with waterfront staff, but 3 of the sites we're pretty convinced will work well. And 1 of the sites is on hold due to COVID, which I'll explain shortly. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder of who might benefit or be served by bike share in the harbor. Certainly residents, anyone commuting for work, employees in the harbor, clearly tourists as well. We have Santa Barbara City College students that live nearby, as well as liveaboards and slip holders. And I would just like to point out that B-Cycle does gather ridership data in real time. And we do see a number of riders that are going to the waterfront and going to the harbor. It's not uncommon to see a bike share bike on its kickstand outside a restaurant in the waterfront. People are seeing this as a viable destination and really wanting to get there. And in fact, our bike share stations that are at the very edge of Lower State Street are seeing a lot of round trip use, which is indicating that somebody's checking the bike out there, probably going to the waterfront and coming back to check the bike in. Next slide, please. So we look at a number of parameters for installation throughout the city, and we applied those to our research in the harbor area as well. These are the 3 big ones that we aim for. Firstly is to maintain the pedestrian through zones on sidewalks. And in layman's terms, this essentially means bike parking takes up space, and we want to ensure that there is sufficient room for pedestrians, people of all modes to use the sidewalk. As you can imagine, there are areas, especially in heavily pedestrian traveled areas, where it's hard to find the space that we need. We keep a minimum of a 6-foot through zone. If we have more real estate, we go much larger if possible. We like to keep that as big as possible. The second parameter is we found in implementation thus far that mounting to existing hardscapes is the easiest, most straightforward, and certainly most flexible option. And part of that is informed by the use of the 3.0 docks. If we see a station that's performing poorly, it's as easy as removing 4 screws, picking the station up and taking it with us. So we have a little bit more flexibility as far as making adjustments. And we also have some flexibility in orientation with these docks. We have done parallel installations, we've done diagonal installations. We can get creative. And lastly, and this is really key to the success of the bike share program in the city of Santa Barbara, is access to key destinations. Bike share only works as a point-to-point transportation option if you can ride it from your house to your job, or from your house to a restaurant to go meet friends. And essentially, it needs to be easier than your other transportation options. Bike riders generally like to ride right up to their destination and pull up and get off the bike and be there. And we see that with bike shares. We need to be close enough that we can serve those key destinations. Next slide, please. So the challenge in meeting those 3 parameters in a place like the harbor and in the vicinity of the harbor is there's a lot of people that use the harbor, and we do have wide sidewalks in certain areas, but especially in the immediate harbor vicinity, it's hard to find somewhere that meets those 3 parameters. So with feedback from the Harbor Commission at our last meeting on February 18th, we revisited the harbor locations, and we actually met up with waterfront staff in the field to get a better sense of what could work, what their operational needs might be, and just to hear their feedback as well. So again, the 4 proposed stations we're showing you this evening were vetted with waterfront staff, and we feel fairly confident could be successful for the bike share program. Next slide, please. This is the first location. This is the sailing center at the harbor. We think there's enough space here to add a 3 or 4 dock station. One of the benefits here is that it's close to the sailing center. It's close to kind of the beginning of that entrance of the harbor, but it's also out of the way. We do have enough space here to maintain that pedestrian through zone. I'd like to note that in the image on the upper right, that picnic table can be moved back a little bit closer to the mini mart, and there's sufficient sidewalk space there. This station would require the relocation of 2 to 3 likely hitching posts. And in my conversations with waterfront staff, we feel that we could actually find a better location for those hitching posts that might be better utilized. Next slide, please. You may remember this location. We were discussing earlier on about putting a bike share location on a slab in the grass here, right behind these trash receptacles. And again, with feedback from Harbor Commission about the different uses here, we revisited this site and found that there's actually sufficient space in the sidewalk area right before the lawn. It's preferable on many fronts. It's a little bit easier to access. It does not require ground disturbance or the pouring of concrete. It gives us the flexibility we need. This would be a 4 to 6 dock station, and we would envision this as a diagonal installation, which maximizes the use of the real estate here and really minimizes the size of the station. And again, I'd like to point out with all of these station locations, this is a pilot program, and we might find locations that work really well, and we might see customer demand, beyond what we can provide. And we might see locations that don't do so well. And our hope is to kind of get a foot in the door here, get a few locations, try out bike share in the harbor, visit operational concerns, and just kind of vet the system a little bit. and then discuss other opportunities down the road. Next slide, please. This was a recommendation from waterfront staff. I wouldn't have seen it myself, but it's a little bit out of the way and yet very close to a lot of popular locations, whether it's, the seafood market or certainly, going out to the Sandspit and Brophy Brothers. And yet this is kind of an underutilized spot. We would envision probably a 5-dock station here, I believe is what we could fit. This would require the relocation of the bench that you see in the image, but waterfront staff has assured me that we could find another suitable location. This one's a little bit different because it's an asphalt installation. So still hardscape, but a little bit different as far as how we fasten the docks down. And again, I think we would want to monitor this operationally to see where cyclists are going when they're leaving the station. Going through Harbor Way out to the entrance is what we foresee, but we would need to kind of check on this and see that that's happening. Next slide, please. So this location, we think is really well suited to bike share. We actually scouted this location prior to COVID happening and identified the potential for locating docks around the base of one of these trees. We do have a lot of flexibility here. We feel that the tree on the left-hand side of the image is a little bit further out of the way and the general pedestrian path of travel in this area, but that it could be very well suited to bike share installation. The hitch here is obviously that we're in the middle of a pandemic and the Breakwater has expanded their outdoor dining into this area. So this is really a placeholder, if you will, for a brighter future when we've returned to some degree of normalcy and can revisit the idea of hosting a bike share station at this location. And one of the ideas that we tossed around as far as the flexibility of these docks is actually circling the tree with the bikes, which would mimic what the existing bike parking is there at this time. Next slide, please. So hopefully I covered enough to get some questions going, but I did just want to reiterate that this is a pilot program and both transportation planning staff and B-Cycle feel strongly that the coastal zone and the waterfront and the harbor are really key to the success of this as a pilot program. And we're excited about the potential for some locations here and starting to see what ridership data looks like. But it is a pilot program and we have to see how well this works and we have to assess performance and potentially make adjustments along the way. We will be going to council for an annual report. And then prior to any pilot program becoming a more permanent fixture in the city, we'd be returning to the Transportation and Circulation Committee and going through all necessary permitting processes. With that, conclude my presentation. And I would just like to say that we're joined this evening by Jesse Rosenberg, who's the General Manager of B-Cycle Santa Barbara. And we are happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. I'm looking at this and it looks like essentially bike racks would be placed. They're kind of big for bike racks, so it wouldn't accommodate as many bikes in this in a given area of space. But more than that, how would you pull power to these charging stations and how intrusive would that be? Would that require jackhammering up concrete in order to get them across to the charging stations, for example?
Excellent question, Commissioner McCray. These are actually a freestanding unit. They have a small self-contained battery cell that lasts for several months. And essentially all it does is commute via cell phone technology, actually. And it unlocks and locks the front fork of the bike or the front wheel of the bike. So B-Cycle's operations team will monitor the battery power of both the docks and the bikes themselves. and they have a mobile unit that can go out and replace batteries and recharge batteries as needed.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Kramer.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. One concern I have about all of the locations, actually, all four of them, is they are not exactly right on the bike path or the beachway. There will have to be ways to discourage some of these bikes from riding on the sidewalks. Weekend traffic there is very, very busy, as I'm sure you know. And for instance, the one near the Breakwater Cafe is also very jammed with people. I was noticing this past weekend. So there'd have to be sort of ramps or something. Do you have that set up in mind?
Excellent question. I think my initial response would be that we do see a lot of bike activity in the harbor, and there is kind of a collective consciousness as far as where bikes go and where bikes don't go. And there could be some operational challenges to bike share and implementing bike share. In the harbor, we might learn something down the road that, oh, people are actually doing this movement. Honestly, I would say that the majority of people, in my experience, want to get on their bike and they want to get on a safe, less stressful bike infrastructure. I can't envision somebody trying to ride on the sidewalk in front of Brophy Brothers. Somebody might do it, but I mean, needless to say, someone might do it.
I had an electric bike about 15 years ago, and I also have regular bike, and it's very tempting to ride in front of Brophy Brothers, but yeah, I can certainly visualize it, but I'm sure that could be taken care of. But one thing I am also concerned about is basically the safety question and the speed limit. Is there any possibility of doing as some of the cities, Southern California cities, such as Newport Beach, and of course, I think in the letters that Anna Marie Gott left at Mill Valley and can't remember the other ones, San Clemente perhaps, have a limited speed limit. I think Newport is 8 miles per hour, and some of the others are 10 miles per hour. And I mean, I think this probably should apply to the whole beachway, not just to the part in the harbor. But is there any thought of looking into that?
Commissioner Kramer, that's an excellent question, and I agree with your point that we would need to change the focus of the conversation to look at the entirety of the beachway.
Okay.
And that really the multimodality of pedestrians, people walking their dogs, somebody with a jogging stroller, and a bicyclist is challenging. And we all know what the beachway is like on a busy Saturday morning when the sun is out. So I think that that's a conversation we can have. I don't know that it necessarily pertains to bike share in the harbor.
Well, bike share would add to it, would be a factor, I think. I mean, I do want to say I support the concept of bike share. I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's throughout the city. There's some near where I live on the east side. I don't see those bikes being particularly used, the ones near Sprouts, for instance. But I don't sit there counting either. So I hope it works out, actually. But
Jesse Rosenberg might be able to weigh in a little bit more here, but we do see good ridership at that Sprouts location. And we've had a lot of really good community feedback about where they're situated, adjacent to a neighborhood and yet also in a commercial district.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Commissioner Kramer, I can weigh in a little. I actually now go to Sprouts quite frequently just to kind of check out what's going on and the activity there. And every time I go into Sprouts, all the staff is, I've gotten to know them quite well, and they are so ecstatic that the racks are there. And a lot of them are actually using it to commute instead of, walk or drive to work. So
Great.
Yeah, and also the bagel place as well. I've
Right.
given them free ride membership coupons. So people are they're still brand new to bike share. They're interested, they're curious. And it's been really, you might see them fully, all there, but our team is out there rebalancing bikes. And for
Okay.
example, today, I asked my team, I was like, hey, which stations were like the least, packed? And the answer was all of them had to be rebalanced. So
Okay.
we already had over 10,000 rides without implementing in the waterfront. So I can assure that the success of the program is just going to skyrocket once we're out there, and we're really excited. We're really also very much heavily, wanting to make sure everyone's safe and all that, and, do a ton of promotions and messaging around safety
What do you
and how to use
envision?
the bike.
What do you envision on the point-to-point at the harbor? I can see it would be very, very helpful and useful to liveaboards and some slip holders perhaps. But what do you envision the primary customers to be?
Yes, Commissioner Kramer, I believe the primary customers are either going to be, tourists. I know already, as Sam had mentioned, that we have seen a ton of bikes just left outside of restaurants, unfortunately, in the sense that people are just kind of leaving there hoping that they're going to be okay. And sometimes they go missing, but that to us points, hey, there's going to be a lot of activity. We need to have more docking stations so people can lock up their bikes. I also think locals on the weekends are very much, I've had a lot of outreach from locals on the weekend saying, hey, when are we going to get docks out in the waterfront? SB Sailing I'm really close with Skip. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a few more questions, but I'd like to let other people ask. So I'll stop at this point. Thank you. Well, if no one else has another question, I'll ask. What about HLC? Will that have they done any specific overlook of the particular docking stations? And what about the possibility of kiosks that were talked about? They don't seem to be mentioned in the presentation this evening, the kiosks.
I'll take this, Jesse.
Okay.
Great question, Commissioner Kramer. We have gone before both ABR and HLC on numerous occasions to receive design review. One of the inherent challenges with bike share is that our permitted vendor, B-Cycle, has a proprietary technology, which is the 3.0 dock. It has a proprietary casing around it. It has a proprietary cell phone technology. It is the only freestanding docked bike share system on the market that does what it does the way it does. And it's why we chose B-Cycle. And in an effort to get council-driven, sorry, I'm getting a really bad echo here. Hold on just a moment. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, that's better. In order to implement the council-directed pilot bike share program, we did go to City Council and we were granted kind of a temporary status for implementation of bike share. And the intent behind this is to see how the program fits in Santa Barbara. We won't know until we try, essentially, is the takeaway. And that's the stage we're at now, is we're trying to see how it fits. We're trying to see if the program can be viable in a long term. In the multiple sessions at HLC, and I believe we've now gone before City Council 3 times, we've received, and Planning Commission as well, we've received a lot of direction about where the docks can be located. We've received clear direction from City Council. We had a February council meeting where we heard that we were only allowed 2 kiosks in the coastal zone, and they would be on Cabrillo Boulevard to the left and right of State Street. So at this point, we have clear direction as far as what that looks like, and are just trying to get situated for the coastal zone.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I just have a question regarding the one location where the bench has to be removed, which I think is right near the Harbor Patrol area. I was always kind of under the impression that that was like a designated loading zone for like the pier or like a possible fire lane for Harbor Patrol. I was just wondering if that was considered in the choosing of that location.
Great question, Commissioner Stanovic. We did discuss that with waterfront staff. And again, I think that operationally, we would need to see if there's any, unanticipated issues that arise. But the thing with bike share is that you're at a station for a relatively minimal amount of time. I don't know if any of the commissioners have actually tried a B-Cycle, but once you've checked out a bike with the B-Cycle app, I would say that you're probably at a station for less than a minute. It's really easy to walk up, open the app, unlock the bike, and you're on your way. So I don't foresee any real issues as far as obstruction. And there's also a lot of parking lot open right there. But again, it's something that we need to keep an eye on. And it's an excellent point you raise.
Great, thanks.
Oh, Chair Sly, I think you're muted.
I've done that so many times. I was thanking Mr. Fertner for the presentation, Ms. Rosenberg for being with us tonight. This recommendation is that looks like review only, so I don't believe there's any motion required, but I will ask one more time if there are any further questions or comments on this.
Yeah, I've got one further question. Who's going to be making the final decisions in terms of the location of these docks?
We envision continuing our dialogue with waterfront staff and deciding based on their operational concerns where they think bike share could fit in the harbor vicinity.
Because I'm a little surprised that there isn't one being considered at the closer to Sea Landing at the end down there. So. Again,
Commissioner Kramer, we're certainly open to recommendations. That's something that we hear a lot when we implement a station in an area where we haven't put bike share before, is suddenly community members are realizing, oh, I've got to walk 6 blocks to do that. But if you put it here, it'd be a lot more accessible for my commute. And I do anticipate, especially in the harbor, that we'll see employees using this as, an alternative commute option. So, the more locations we could serve in the harbor, the better.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you both again for being with us.
Thank you for having us this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Ferner. Thanks, Ms. Rosenberg. Appreciate your time.
Chair Sly, before we move on, we do have a couple hands raised for public comments on this item.
Okay, good, thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, the first speaker is Anna Marie Gott. Anna Marie Gott, I'm going to unmute you and you may begin speaking now.
Commissioners, I wrote a letter and I would hope that you would very much consider that in regards to the motions that I recommended, because you are only looking at this for the second time. The first time you actually even heard about this was in January, and you were quite concerned about the speed, which is 17 miles an hour. And yes, some of these bikes are going to be traveling on the sidewalk. I don't know if you've driven around town, but I see people traveling on the sidewalk with bikes all the time. So having these particular bikes in an area where people cannot easily access the bikes because there's a curb, you can imagine that when they return the bikes, those bikes are going to be on the sidewalk. And they may actually even take the bikes once they get them down the sidewalk until they can actually get on the beachway. There are cities that have begun to regulate, and some of them have already had regulations in the past regarding the speed because they realize that there is a lot of pedestrian conflict, not just with regular bikes, but especially with e-bikes. So regardless of the fact that, you know, this might have gone before the city council before, it never actually came to you. And you are far more familiar with the amount of tourists down on the waterfront every single year and seeing how congested that is. And I would really recommend that you bring this back to have a meeting so that you can talk about regulating it, especially since you don't know where the other locations are going to be. You don't know how many bikes are going to be at any particular location. And this is going to be used by tourists who won't necessarily be as cognizant of, you know, Santa Barbara and where things are when they're down on the waterfront. And this is.
Next speaker we have is Barry Remus. Barry Remus, I'm going to unmute you and you may begin. It appears that you're self-muted at the moment.
Good evening, Chair Sly and commissioners. My name is Barry Remus, and I'm calling on behalf of COAST, the Coalition for Sustainable Transportation, and also along with our partners at SP Bike, the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition. So as you can imagine, as advocates for active transportation and healthy environment and healthy people, we are avid supporters of the bike share program. No matter who the operator is, we look at this as a wonderful opportunity to help Santa Barbara revitalize and to help encourage people to have healthier options to get down to the harbor with less congestion. So what I wanted to do is just let you know while the locations, of course, the specific locations at your discretion and that of harbor staff can be, you know, manipulated and worked out to you know, achieve the optimal amount of safety. I do want to point out one of the benefits of having docks specifically at the harbor. You may say to yourself, well, why are docks needed? Why can't people just rent, you know, borrow the bike, take it to the harbor, and then bring it back? Well, in order to incentivize people to stay longer at the harbor and enjoy the harbor, it's in their best interest to be able to have a dock, not just for the security aspect of it, but to be able to lock that bike up, end their session. Because remember, the longer a bike is out, the more people are paying for that bike rental. So if they can lock the bike up at a dock and not have to worry about paying for that time, it's incentivizing to actually stay longer at the harbor, enjoy the restaurants, the shops, take the little tube ferry out to the Stearns Wharf and back, and then re-establish another bike rental session with another bike, pull out of a dock, and then get back. So there's an economic benefit to the city to help revitalize our community for that. And also just regarding the speed, it's important to note that these bikes achieve a maximum speed of 17 miles an hour, but in most cases, people aren't riding that fast, and you really have to pedal hard to get the power of these bikes.
That concludes our public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you both for your comments. Some good points were made, and this being a pilot program, I'm sure we will learn as we go along, and there's some things that will change along the way, and hopefully it will get worked out to the benefit of the community and be a successful program. So we do appreciate your comments. Hearing no other comments from commissioners, let's move to item 7 on our agenda, the lottery drawing for 20-foot slip permits. The recommendation is that the Harbor Commission, via the chair, by the way the rules work, conduct a lottery drawing to rank individuals who applied for 2 available 20-foot slip permits in Santa Barbara Harbor. For these 2 available slips, we got 289 applications. So the staff has researched and vetted randomizing software, which takes a long time to draw because we don't know who might be a successful bidder and then decline to actually take the slip. We have to rank everybody. It would take a long time to rank and record all 289. So we're going to do it with randomizing software. And I'm the one who gets to do it, I guess. So wish me luck. I think I can operate the software, but we'll see how it turns out. And Ms. Rodriguez is going to, I'm going to mute myself, and Ms. Rodriguez is going to narrate as we go along here, and we'll show you what's happening as we do it, and then it will be posted on our website. So
Before we get to the lottery process, we do have Eric Ingebrigtsen, our harbor operations manager, who's going to do a little presentation with some details about the lottery as well.
okay.
Good evening again, Chair Sly and Commissioners. So yeah, what we've been waiting for here, the big 20-foot lottery. Next slide, please. So in its March 21st meeting, the Harbor Commission voted to allow the Waterfront Department to go ahead and accept applications for the 20-foot lottery slip drawing. Ads were placed in and published in legal ads in the Montecito Journal, the Santa Barbara News Press, with notifications that the applications would be accepted for a 3-week period commencing April 1st through April 21st. Next slide, please. So we have two 20-foot slips available. If you look to the right there on the schematic, you have the highlighted in red. That's slips 2A212 and 2A213. And as part of those slip sizes, the minimum length has to be 16 feet and the maximum overall length can be 22 feet. Must be owned by the slip permittee, must be operable and seaworthy, and may be pleasure or commercial vessel. Next slip, please. So the lottery application details, they were strictly accepted again for 3 weeks, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning on April 1st through 5 o'clock p.m. on the 21st. And we did have paper applications available, but all apps were submitted online. Of the applications received, we had 294 with 289 qualifying individuals. 5 were disqualified. We had a couple of duplicates with same names and 2 married couples with same names and 1 individual who applied after the deadline. Next slide, please. So the cost associated with this lottery, it's a monthly slip fee from $184.40 to $202.84, plus you pay electricity. The security deposit is $368.80, and there is no slip transfer fee associated with this assignment. The permit transferability will be for the first 5 years of the new permittee's occupancy, and the slip permit issued via waiting lists are subject to an elevated transfer fee, most expensive during the first year, trickling down each year. This was meant to deter private party property profiteering on a public resource. Next slide, please. Acceptance details. Prospective winners of available slips should be aware of the following. If the slip winner is currently a slip holder or a mooring permit holder, or if the winner's spouse or registered domestic partner has a slip in the mooring field or in the slip proper, they must be relinquished back to the city in order to accept the 20-foot slip permit per Muni Code. You must register an approved vessel to the slip permit within 90 days of deadline. And if this is not met, the permit assignment is considered incomplete and will be offered to the next person on the list. Next slide, please. So lottery drawing details. Of the 289 applications, as Commissioner or Chair Sly had mentioned, one by one hand drawing would be problematic to read all 289 names out of our beloved lottery wheel that Director Wilshire had spent hours polishing for this lottery. But we have chosen to go with the randomresults.com, and it uses the most common randomizing algorithm, and it's considered very trustworthy, scoring 100% reliability on the Scam Advisor. Next slide, please. The lottery drawing results are available online at randomizerresults.com or on the Santa Barbara Waterfront government webpage. Offer letters will go out to the top 2 individuals as well as phone calls. And staff looks forward to assigning these slips and welcomes the new individuals, slip permittees to the Santa Barbara Harbor. And that concludes my report. And I will send it over back to Chair Sly, who will conduct the lottery, accompanied by Jeanette Krasinski, who will also be with Angela Rodriguez narrating. Thank you.
Hello, this is Angela Rodriguez, and I'm going to be narrating the lottery process for everyone. So right now I'm getting Chair Sly's screen shared, and he's getting ready to start the process.
Okay, Angela, we're trying to get this presentation format up here.
If you'd like to call for a recess, we can get that situated on the screen for a moment and come back.
Click on your,
Okay.
go to your drive, and double click on the PowerPoint, and then put it in, let's scoot that window over, that's behind you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing
And then click right in there, the next thing,
here
above it,
above it.
and then that
Oh, here we go.
icon right there. Here.
Okay, will you guys let us know when the screen is situated? For now, I have shared the Harbor Commission agenda. Okay, so this is the list of applicants. There are 289 qualified names on there, and Chair Sly is copying the names. Now Chair Sly is opening the randomizer, randomresults.com, and he's going to paste all 289 names into the ranking field. He's changing the number from 1 to 289 in order to rank all 289 names. And he's clicking draw now. And congratulations to the top 2 individuals, John Waddle and Linda Flegel. As you're viewing the ranked names on the screen, Chair Sly is copying the names so we can create a ticket, which will officially record the results and make them available to the public. going through and copying all of them and just getting the names only. Okay, and here's where we create the ticket or confirmation, if you will. Here's the most challenging part of the whole process, proving that Chair Sly is not a robot. Success. We officially have our ticket number confirming the ranked list, which is now available to the public by going to randomresults.com and punching in ticket number 240625M2YXC. This number will also be posted on the Waterfront website where the public can check the status of the lottery. The Waterfront Department would like to congratulate the top 2 individuals. Jeanette Przinski, our administrative supervisor, will reach out to the 2 individuals by phone to make sure that they are aware that they won. And we'd like to thank everyone who participated in this lottery process, and a special thank you to Chair Sly for conducting the lottery. Now we will move on to our next item, Commission and Staff Report.
Okay, thank you for that narration, Ms. Rodriguez. Well done. I'm very happy that I got through it without blowing it up. So we're moving to subcommittee reports.
Okay. You want a subcommittee report from the policy slip assignment?
Yeah, I think that's the only subcommittee that's met since the last meeting, right?
Okay. I'm not going to be too lengthy with this at all because one of the results of the meeting that we had on May 18th was that we will give a more fulsome report, I believe, at the next full Harbor Commission meeting on both the proceeding and the results and direction of the subcommittee up to that point. But we did cover, or we made further progress on the proposed revised slip transfer fee structures, including the introduction of new data from the county that was presented by Director Wiltshire. And we talked about a possible harbor user survey that now is turned into reality. It'll be released at 5 a.m. in the morning. And then we also talked about the State Lands Commission response to our inquiry about family additions. So that is really it in a nutshell. Mike, Commissioner Nelson, do you want to add anything?
No, you did a fine job.
Okay. All right. That's quite an active subcommittee, I will add. There's a lot of input from the public. It's been a lengthy process so far, so there's a lot of content that's been produced. So we're looking forward to giving you guys on the Full Harbor Commission a report.
I just have a quick question regarding that.
Yeah, Adam.
I know that last meeting there was talk about the outreach program, and that you had mentioned something, John, about like a survey. Was that part of the outreach program, or is there some maybe more details or a timeline on that? And maybe you guys can go into that, or just kind of shine some light on just the whole process of that and how the community will be involved in that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Adam. So really what we're talking about is the survey, right? And getting that out there. So behind the scenes, that is on the subcommittee, the process involved talking about a methodology, like how are we going to do that, right? And what we decided on in order to just kind of get it out of committee and into some type of public process was a survey using SurveyMonkey. So what we did is Waterfront drafted an original set of questions, and then we, that is Commissioner Nelson, Commissioner Sloan, and myself, went through and redlined the questions and, gave our suggestions to Waterfront staff. And then we announced it. We talked about it a little bit in subcommittee. So beyond that, though, there isn't much scope in terms of a more formalized outreach program. In other words, there aren't any public meetings scheduled other than the subcommittee meetings. So that's what we're doing now at this point. It doesn't mean that won't change, but that's the result of our efforts so far. Mike, do you want to add anything?
No, but there did seem to be support that this would not be a one-off, that
Right.
there was value in doing, whether it's SurveyMonkey or something more formal, there was value in having regular communications with our slip holders and the community. And I think everybody seemed to feel that was a good idea. So this is sort of our first stab at it with hopes of doing it on an annual basis.
Yeah. And we're open to suggestions. Obviously, if we're going to present to the full Harbor Commission, Adam, weigh in at any time now, or, don't wait until we present to the full commission.
Okay, great. And then just one thing with that survey, is that going to be like delivered by email to the slip holders, or is that going to be like available on the Harbor Commission website? Or I'm just kind of wondering how like the public will have access to that survey, or just the rollout of it.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. We'll chart.
Yeah. Just to kind of add to what Commissioner Stedman and Nelson were saying. So this was really a push just to get something out there as a first step to gather some data, just to get some input from those who may not have been engaged. So it is going to go by email to all of our slip holders who have a registered email with us. It's also going to go to everybody who's on the wait list who has provided an email. We're going to put QR codes on the marina entrance gates. So anybody with a cell phone can scan that QR code and get the survey online. We are going to make paper copies available. If people want paper copies, there's email address and our contact info available. They can come and fill out or pick up a paper copy. So really no holds bar. We're trying to use all of the contacts that we have to kind of disseminate this as widely as we possibly can. And so that's kind of the attempt at what we're going to do. But if you know of anybody who wants a copy, you can forward them to us. We can get them a paper copy or direct them to the web.
Great. No, it sounds like a really good idea. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the process will improve, and get a little bit more on war footing, right, as we go forward. But it's our first attempt. We wanted to get it out the door, right? So, yeah.
Great.
Any other questions or input, Mike, Nelson?
No, but I don't. But I would wonder if Chairman Sly would allow me to sort of make a quick just an announcement to the Commercial Fisheries Subcommittee, because last week was a very exciting week for the work that the commission did on that subject more than a year ago.
Absolutely.
The as you'll recall, we asked for guidance from the city council on the provision of infrastructure for the commercial fishing industry and what level of involvement would the city consider and recommend to us. The result was a unanimous vote by the mayor and council, not only to attempt to satisfy the infrastructure problem that the commercial fleet had, but also to look at the seafood industry and a recent upsurge in purchase of local seafood to say, why don't we embrace the seafood industry as a way of diversifying our economy? So what was rolled out was essentially a program that would involve acquisition, that would involve changes to the zoning to accommodate coastal dependent uses as identified in the local coastal plan update, prepare an economic development strategy, and then a funding plan that would capitalize on available federal, state, local grants. The acquisition process has been led directly by council members Friedman and Jordan, and they're not complete yet, but I can say that they've sort of worked through the public properties and they're now looking at private properties and in fact have had some promising discussions with some key property owners. But what I wanted to talk about today was sort of the economic development piece. We've worked very closely with Jason Harris, the economic development manager. He is producing an economic development plan for the city. And he has included in that economic development plan in draft form a reference to the local seafood industry, the commercial fishing fleet, the need for infrastructure, the need to literally revitalize our working waterfront, which was really a great thing to see. I have kept him involved of our communications with state and federal funding agencies, and we got a positive response from the Economic Development Administration. And based on that, Jason basically said, you know, the city council is considering budgets right now. And we always envisioned a partnership and with the city and the commercial fishermen to apply for grants. And so there's a local matching requirement on the USDA programs and the EDA programs. And based on that, we were encouraged to submit a request for funding to cover a local match should we be successful with one of our applications this year. That application for funding was heard as part of the Waterfront Department's budget presentation last week and was favorably received by, I was counting the votes, by 4 of our city council members and received favorable consideration by the Finance Committee shortly thereafter. So a partnership between the city and the commercial fishing industry is unfolding itself in a very positive way, and just wanted the commission to know that. We will move on to another phase very soon when a new community development director is hired with the zoning issues that the subcommittee dealt with very early on. So things are moving very well. There's a real partnership for the city and the commercial fishing industry, which is, I think, a very good thing for the Harbor Commission and its engagement in this important issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. That's good news. Interesting news. Very good. Okay, thank you. Is there any further communications from either commissioners or staff?
I've got a question for staff. How many pounds worth of stuff were pulled out of the harbor on Sunday?
Mr. Engretson, That is right up your alley. It was a
Right.
lot.
Yes, there was. There was quite a bit of debris pulled from the ocean floor, and I'll report back on that next month. But I can tell you right now, close to 3 times the norm.
Wow, okay.
Wow.
It's almost a record, isn't it? I mean, or is it a record? I think so.
I believe it is.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
How many lobster traps did you pull up?
Oh, a lot of lobster traps, receivers, yeah, a lot of various debris.
Yeah,
And I'll report on it again next month.
perfect.
Okay, thank you. Any other communication?
Did the mayor announce that there was going to be fireworks?
That's a great question. We just, on Tuesday at council, we awarded the contract to Garden State Fireworks for that portion of it. So as of now, the tentative plan is to move forward with the fireworks portion, but not include all of the other stuff, sort of the stages and the music and the vendors. So the intent of the city is to move forward with the fireworks component, but kind of message that it's going to be a little bit different this year. Although we'll have the same fireworks display, we're trying to promote people not coming down en masse and gathering, but kind of watching them from a distance for what that's worth.
Hey, quiet down.
And then just one other thanks to staff and to Chair Sly. I think that lottery is a pretty unique event, and a lot of work kind of went in on the back end to get that all up and running and run. So although it looked simple and smooth, there was some work on Chair Sly's part and staff. So
Yeah, and staff I know did put a lot of time and energy and interest in figuring that out and getting it, learning it and getting it working. So that's much appreciated. I hope having learned it, I hope it can be used again in the future instead of drawing out and recording hundreds of names. Pretty time consuming. Okay, so it sounds pretty quiet out there. I guess we could entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right.
Thank you all, commissioners and staff, and any members of the public and 20-foot slip applicants who might be out there tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next month.